She was 19 years old, in love, completely, fully, with both feet. And then one morning, everything changed. 2 lines on a test, a shaking hand, a cold bathroom floor. She called him right away. He said, "I will be there in an hour." He came in 2.5 hours. And he was different when he walked through the door. Something had shut off behind his eyes. 3 weeks later, his mother arrived at her dorm room. Beige coat, perfect posture, a check for $50,000 placed on the bed. She said, "My son has obligations that existed before you." She said, "This child does not belong in our world." She left. And then he left. And then the silence came. 10 years of silence. No call when the baby was born. No card. No word. Nothing. She raised their daughter alone. She built everything alone. She became someone strong and specific and completely her own. And then one Tuesday, a completely ordinary Tuesday, a cream envelope arrived in her mailbox. His name on the return address. His lawyers. His words. He wanted to meet his daughter. He was begging. And now she had to decide, not for him, not for herself, for a 10-year-old girl who had just told her mother, very quietly, while zipping her jacket, "I just thought it was nice, a dad who still shows up." What would you do? What do you do when the person who left everything comes back, asking for the one thing you built without them? Stay with this story, because what happens next is not what you expect. And what this woman does, how she handles it, what she says, what she chooses, will stay with you long after it is over. This story is for every woman who ever built something beautiful out of something broken. It is about boundaries. It is about what children need. And it is about the quiet, extraordinary courage of a woman who never stopped moving forward. If this story speaks to you, if you have ever had to be strong when you did not feel strong, hit like so more people find it. Drop a comment below and tell us, what would you have done in her place? Share this with someone who needs to hear it today. And if you are new here, subscribe and stay. We tell stories like this every week. Stories about real life, real choices, real strength.
The first thing Claire heard that morning was Lily singing. Off-key, loud, something she had made up herself about a frog who wanted pancakes. Claire lay in bed with her eyes still closed, just listening. That voice, that ridiculous, beautiful, completely invented song about a frog and his breakfast preferences. 10 years. 10 years, and she still marveled at it. The simple fact that this voice existed, that this person existed, this entire extraordinary human being who had come from the worst moment of Claire's life and somehow become the best thing in it. She got up. The bedroom was cool, the floor cold under her bare feet. October had finally arrived in full. She could smell it through the window she always left cracked. That particular sharpness, dry leaves and cold air and something that smelled like the season, changing its mind about being warm. She pulled on her robe. The kitchen smelled like burnt toast. Lily stood at the counter, in her soccer jersey, butter knife in one hand, the toast in the other. She was singing directly at the toaster. Full performance. No audience required. Claire leaned against the doorframe for a moment and just watched. This. Right here. This was the whole thing. "You're going to be late," Claire said. Lily turned around. Smile first. Always the smile first. Wide and crooked and missing a molar on the left side that had come out 6 weeks ago and left a gap that made her look simultaneously younger and older. "I made you toast too," Lily said. "I see that." "It's a little dark." "I see that too." Claire crossed the kitchen. She kissed the top of her daughter's head. Lily smelled like strawberry shampoo and someone who had very definitely not brushed her teeth yet. Claire held out the toothbrush without a word. Lily groaned without a word. 10 years of negotiation. all done in silence. This was a Tuesday. A completely ordinary Tuesday in the middle of October. Later, Claire would try very hard to remember every detail of the ordinary part. The burnt toast, the strawberry shampoo, the cold floor, the frog song, before the mail came, before everything changed. Again, she drove Lily to school at 7:45, watched her disappear through the double doors, that backpack, still slightly too big for her body even now. It made her look like a very purposeful turtle every single morning without fail. Claire laughed to herself in the car. She did this every morning, just this small private laugh. Then she drove to work. Briar Creek Rehabilitation Center sat on the quiet end of Maple Street. Brown brick building, good windows, a garden out front that the staff maintained together in rotating shifts. Claire had planted the rosemary along the left path 3 summers ago. It came back every year now. Sturdy, reliable, she worked with stroke patients mostly. Some pediatric cases on Thursdays. She had been there 4 years. She knew which patients took their coffee with 2 sugars. She knew which ones needed the television on low during exercises. She knew which ones needed complete silence to concentrate, and which ones needed someone talking to them the whole time to keep their mind off the difficulty of what they were trying to do. She was good at her work. She genuinely liked her work. The day passed the way good days pass. Quietly, with purpose. Her 3 o'clock appointment, a 67-year-old retired school teacher named Mr. Garvey, made a joke about her being too cheerful for a Tuesday. She told him cheerful was part of the treatment plan. He said he wanted a refund. She laughed all the way to her car. She stopped at the grocery store on the way home, bought chicken thighs. The salad Lily refused to eat, the specific brand of ranch dressing that Lily would only eat the salad if it was drowned in. She bought a magazine she would read maybe 4 pages of before it ended up under the coffee table. She bought flowers, yellow ones. She always bought yellow flowers on Tuesday. Her mother had done that every Tuesday. No particular reason. Just to have them. Just because the week needed something bright in the middle of it. Claire had carried that habit for years now, like a hand-me-down that fit better than the original owner ever knew. She pulled into her driveway at 5:15. Small house, green shutters, the garden out front she had planted and killed twice before it finally took. The mailbox at the end of the path, the one Lily had painted a ladybug on when she was 7. The paint was fading now, but the ladybug was still there, still doing its job. Claire grabbed the mail without looking at it. She never looked at the mail in the driveway. This was a habit. Mail was for inside. She walked toward the front door, shifted the grocery bag, the flowers. Then she looked down at what she was holding. Bills. A dental appointment reminder, a catalog for outdoor furniture, and at the bottom, a thick cream-colored envelope. She stopped walking. The weight of it was wrong, too substantial for a bill, too formal for anything personal. She looked at the return address. Caldwell and Associates, LLC. She stood in her own driveway, flowers in one arm, groceries in the other, the cream envelope in her right hand. She stood there for a long time. The neighbor's dog barked twice and stopped. A car went past on the street. Somewhere down the block, a kid was bouncing a basketball in a driveway. That rhythmic sound, steady, ordinary. Caldwell, that name? That name she had put down 10 years ago and walked away from and built an entire life without. That name on cream paper in her driveway on a Tuesday. Move, Claire. Go inside. She made herself move. She put every single grocery away first, deliberately, slowly, every item in its place. Chicken thighs in the refrigerator, ranch dressing in the door, salad on the middle shelf, magazine on the coffee table. The flowers in the blue vase on the windowsill. The blue vase her aunt had given her when she moved to North Carolina. The vase that had held 10 years of Tuesday flowers. Then she sat at the kitchen table. She looked at the envelope. She was 29 years old. She had not heard that name in 10 years. She had made a deliberate, conscious, difficult choice to not hear it again. She had moved cities, changed her field of study, built a career, built a home, built a daughter, all of it specifically constructed so that name would never matter again. And here it was, in her kitchen, on cream paper, on a Tuesday. She opened the envelope. 2 pages, official letterhead. Clean serif font. The first paragraph was legal language, careful and precisely worded. The law firm represented one Preston Caldwell. Mr. Caldwell had recently become aware of certain personal matters he felt compelled to address. Mr. Caldwell respectfully requested a meeting with Ms. Claire Whitmore at her earliest convenience. The second paragraph was different. The formality was still there, but something underneath it had shifted. Something that sounded like it had been written by an actual human being who was not a template. It said, he was not seeking legal action. He was not seeking to disrupt her life or make demands. He understood he had no right to ask for anything. He was asking anyway. He wanted to know his daughter. He wanted the chance to be a father. Claire read the letter once. Then she read it again. Then she put it face down on the table. She pressed both hands flat against the wood, felt the grain of it, the solid, real, anchored weight of it. He wants to know her. She thought about the years, not abstractly, specifically, the 31-hour labor, the 4 a.m. feedings, the first ear infection, the 18-month sleep regression that lasted 4 months, the toddler years, the starting school years, every single soccer practice, every single sick day, every single nightmare she had climbed out of bed for, every single homework assignment, every single birthday party in this small backyard with the garden she had killed twice before it took. 10 years of all of it. Alone. And now, he wants to know her. I'm not going to cry, Claire thought. Then she cried. Not dramatically, not the way it happens in movies. The kind of crying that is mostly your whole body finally exhaling something it has been holding without knowing it was holding it. Slow, silent, her hands still flat on the kitchen table. Her face just wet, quietly. 3 minutes, maybe 4, then she stopped. She got up. She washed her face at the kitchen sink. She looked at herself in the small mirror by the back door, eyes a little red. Nothing that wouldn't fade. She checked the time. She had 38 minutes before she needed to pick up Lily from soccer practice. She picked the letter up off the table. She put it in the kitchen drawer, underneath the takeout menus and the collection of dead batteries she kept meaning to throw away. She drove to pick up her daughter. Lily got in the car, sweaty and electric. She had scored a goal. She explained the exact positioning to Claire in precise detail. She reenacted her own footwork in the passenger seat. She said the goal was historic. Claire said it was a school night. Lily said historic goals had no relationship to school nights. Claire said that was not how any of this worked. Lily said history would prove her right. They got ice cream. Lily ate hers and talked and laughed and talked more. Her hands moved when she talked. They always had. Even as a toddler, she had talked with her entire body. Something inherited from somewhere. Claire sometimes wondered. She drove, she listened, she laughed in all the right places, and underneath every moment of it, the letter sat in the kitchen drawer like a stone at the bottom of a clear lake. You could see the bottom clearly. The stone was absolutely still. It had not moved in 10 years, but it was there. It had always been there. Claire glanced at her daughter's profile in the passenger seat. the straight nose, the way she laughed with her whole face, those quick, careful eyes that missed nothing. There were things about Lily that did not come from Claire. She had always known that. She had never pretended otherwise. Not to herself, not to Lily. The yellow flowers were in the blue vase on the windowsill. Tuesdays had a habit of being a lot of things. She did not sleep well that night. She lay in the dark and did not sleep, and the memories came anyway. The way memories always come when you finally stop running from them, slowly, specifically. One detail pulling the next one behind it. The smell of a particular jacket. The way he laughed at things, she said. That genuine laugh. The real one, not the polite one. She had known the difference even then. The restaurant on 5th Street, with the candles too close to the tablecloth. The waiter who had to move, one of them. The way Preston had laughed about it, and she had laughed too. She was 19. She had been a 19-year-old girl from a middle-class family in Columbus, Ohio. Partial scholarship at State. Communications major. Wanted to be a journalist. Believed she was good at reading people. She had been wrong about that last part. Preston Caldwell had walked into the coffee shop where she worked on a Wednesday afternoon in October, not because he needed coffee. She found out much later that he had 3 different coffee machines in his off-campus apartment. He came in because a friend had dared him. That was the version of the story she had arrived at eventually, after everything. A dare between bored rich boys. A game. She hadn't known that then. She had known a tall, dark-haired, 22-year-old with easy confidence and an actual attention span. That second thing was rarer than it should have been. He listened when she talked, not performed listening. Actually listened. He asked follow-up questions. He remembered things she said from one conversation to the next. He texted in complete sentences. She had decided that complete sentences were a reliable marker of adult character. She had been 19. She lay in the dark and let herself remember. She had been careful at first. She knew who the Caldwells were. Everyone did. Real estate money. 3 generations of it. The kind of family that had expectations. Preston was supposed to graduate and enter the business. He was supposed to marry someone appropriate. She had known in the back of her mind that she was not appropriate. But he made her feel like appropriate didn't matter. That was the gift he gave her. That was also the trap. He made her feel like the world his family lived in was just a structure. And structures could be questioned. What mattered was how people treated each other. And he treated her like she was exactly who she was supposed to be. 8 months. They dated for 8 months. She fell in love. Completely. With both feet. The way you only fall the first time. The way you cannot fall again exactly like that because you only have one first time. And then it is used, and you are different. And then she found out she was pregnant. The bathroom of her dorm room, cold, small. The test balanced on the edge of the sink, the window too high to see out of, the fluorescent light that buzzed faintly overhead. 2 lines. She had stared at those 2 lines for a very long time. Her first thought was not panic. It was something stranger and quieter than panic. Something that felt like, oh, this changes everything, all of it, everything. She called Preston that same night, not texted, called. She needed to hear his voice. He answered right away. She told him. Her voice shook, but she said it clearly and completely. I am pregnant. It is yours. I know what I am asking you to face. I need you to come over. He was quiet on the phone for a moment. Then he said, okay, I'll be there in an hour. He came in 2.5 hours, and he was different when he walked in. She had felt it before she could name it. Something careful and closed off where the warmth had been, like someone had turned a dial from open to shut and hoped she wouldn't notice. He sat down on the edge of her desk chair. He looked at his own hands. He said, My parents need to know about this. She said, yes. He said, they are not going to be happy. She said, I know. He said, I need some time to figure out what to do. She asked what figuring it out meant. He did not answer clearly. She asked if he wanted her to end the pregnancy. He said it was her choice. His voice was very careful when he said it. Too careful. The kind of careful that means the person has already made a choice and is hoping you will make the same one without them having to say it out loud. She told him she was keeping the baby. He nodded. He said he understood. He said he would be in touch. He said they would figure it out together. He left. She called him 3 times over the following 2 weeks. He answered twice, short conversations, vague and careful. He said things were complicated with his family. He said he needed more time. He said he was working on it. Then he stopped answering. The silence lasted 4 days. And on the 4th day, Eleanor Caldwell arrived. She knocked on Claire's dorm room door like someone who had never in her life had to consider whether her arrival was welcome. Claire opened the door, and there she was. A woman in her late 50s. Beige cashmere coat, posture like architecture. The kind of composure that comes from never having had to be afraid. She said, "May I come in?" It was not a question. She came inside. She took the single desk chair, the only real chair in the room. Claire sat on the edge of the bed. The room was small and suddenly smaller. Eleanor said, "I will get to the point." She placed a check on the bed beside Claire. Claire looked at it. $50,000. She was 19. She was on a partial scholarship. She worked part-time at a coffee shop for $9 an hour. $50,000 was a number so large it felt abstract. It felt like a different language. It was security. It was years of rent. It was every financial fear she had about raising a child alone. Eleanor said, "I want you to understand that Preston has obligations to this family that existed before he ever met you. I want you to understand that you are a young woman with your entire life ahead of you, and I want you to understand that this child, if you choose to have it, does not belong in our world, not in the way things stand, not now." Claire looked at the check. She thought about her mother who had raised her alone after Claire's father left, her mother who had worked 2 jobs for years, her mother who bought yellow flowers on Tuesdays and never once made Claire feel like a weight. Claire picked up the check. She held it. She felt the paper of it. Then she held it out to Eleanor. Eleanor looked at the check, then at Claire. "No," Claire said, the smallest word. It contained everything. Eleanor took the check. She stood. She left, still completely composed, still in the beige cashmere coat. The door closed behind her with a soft, expensive click. Claire sat alone in her dorm room. She sat there for a very long time. She had never heard from Preston again. Not one call, not one text, not a card when Lily was born. Not a word in 10 years, not a single sound. In the beginning, she had made excuses for him. He was young. Eleanor had gotten to him. Somewhere inside him was a better person being held down by family obligation. She had made the excuses the way you make them, when the alternative is accepting that someone you loved made a clear choice, and the choice they made was to disappear. But eventually, the excuses wore through. He was 22 years old, a grown man. He had made his choice, and his choice was nothing. So she had made hers. She left Columbus at 6 months pregnant. She transferred to a school in North Carolina where her aunt lived. She finished her degree. She changed her field. Occupational therapy suited her better anyway. She liked the practical, physical work of helping people move through the world. She liked the incremental progress. She liked watching someone who had been told they might not recover do the impossible thing 1 millimeter at a time. She had built a life. The life was genuinely, honestly, specifically good, and in the center of it was Lily. Who knew that her father was not there? Who knew it was not her fault? Who knew her mother loved her more than she could say? Claire finally slept around 2 in the morning. No dreams, just dark, just rest. The honest rest of someone who had been carrying things all day. In the morning, Lily came into her room at 6:50 and announced that it was Wednesday, as if this were news, as if Claire might have been uncertain. "It is indeed Wednesday," Claire said. "Gym class," Lily said. "I need my other sneakers. Hall closet. What if they're not? Then we look." They looked. The sneakers were there. Lily looked briefly put out that the crisis she had anticipated did not materialize. They went through the morning, cereal, teeth, backpack. The drive to school. Lily talked about the frog song the whole way. It had new verses. The frog now had a friend. The friend was a turtle who also wanted breakfast items. The turtle had strong opinions about waffles specifically. Claire listened. She asked questions about the turtle. She had opinions about the turtle's character based on the available information. She drove home. She stood in her kitchen. The drawer was right there. She thought, "I have to make the right decision." She thought, "I have to figure out first what the right decision is." She thought, "She is 10. She is going to start asking bigger questions soon. Children always do." She thought, "He does not get to walk back in and be the hero." She thought, "This is not about what he gets." She picked up her phone. She called Dana. Dana Hargrove answered on the second ring. "Tell me something good," Dana said. "My seventh graders nearly lit my classroom on fire today with vinegar. I need good news immediately." "I got a letter," Claire said. A pause. A very specific pause. "From who?" Dana said. Not a question. They had been best friends since their freshman year of college. Dana knew the whole story, every chapter of it. She had been there for most of it. "From his lawyers," Claire said. "He wants to meet Lily." Silence. Longer, this time. "Okay," Dana said. Her voice shifted. The joke stopped. The real Dana came forward, the one who had sat with Claire in that dorm bathroom, the one who had eaten terrible vending machine sandwiches for 31 hours in a hospital waiting room. "Okay, tell me everything," Claire told her. The cream envelope, the legal language and the human language underneath it, the 3 minutes of crying at the kitchen table, the ice cream afterward, Lily's reenactment of her footwork in the passenger seat. When she finished, Dana was quiet for a moment. "How do you feel?" Dana asked. "I don't know," Claire said. "Yes, you do." Claire looked at the kitchen drawer. "I feel like he does not get to just walk back in," she said. 10 years of actual life happened. Lily's entire childhood happened. And now he sends a letter. And what does he expect? Dana asked. The letter says he is not demanding anything. He is asking. Then maybe he has changed. Or maybe his father just died, and he is having a crisis, and Lily is what he is reaching for. Silence. "She has a right to know him," Dana said, gently, not for his sake, for hers. Claire knew that. She had always known that. It was the thing she had been sitting next to all day, without looking at directly. "I know," she said quietly. "What are you going to do?" Claire pulled open the drawer. She took out the letter from under the takeout menus. She held it. "I do not know yet," she said. "But I am not doing anything until I know what is best for her. Not for him, not for me, for her." "That is the right answer," Dana said. "I know," Claire said. Outside the window, the Tuesday flowers had gone dark in the evening light. He looked older. That was the first thing. Obvious, maybe. 10 years had passed? Of course he looked older. But the way he looked older was not what she had expected. Less polished, somehow. The easy confidence she remembered was still there, but it had been through something, like it had been taken apart and reassembled, and most of the pieces were in the right places, but you could see the seams now if you looked. She had agreed to meet him at a coffee shop. Her choice. A place near her work where the staff knew her name. Neutral ground that was also, quietly, her ground. She arrived first on purpose. She was sitting at the corner table when he walked through the door. He saw her immediately. He stopped for half a second. Then he walked over. Dark coat, good fabric, the kind of coat that cost what it cost without announcing it. He sat down across from her. "Claire," he said. "Preston," she said. Neither of them spoke for a moment. The espresso machine hissed at the counter. Someone picked up their order and said thank you. The ordinary sounds of a room full of people getting through their Wednesday. "Thank you for coming," he said. "I am not here for you," she said. Her voice was level. She had worked on level. "I want to be clear about that first. I am here because I have a 10-year-old daughter who is going to start asking harder questions soon. I am trying to determine whether meeting you is good for her." He nodded. "That is fair," he said. "It is not about fair," she said. "It is just the truth." He looked at her. Something in his expression was careful, and also, underneath the careful, genuinely ashamed. She recognized the difference. She had spent 4 years helping patients relearn how to use their bodies. She was good at reading what was real and what was performed. This was real. That did not make it enough, but it was real. "She knows about me?" he asked. "She knows she has a father," Claire said. "She knows you could not be there when she was born. She does not know all the details. She is 10. I have never lied to her about you. I have never made you the villain. I have told her age-appropriate truth at each stage." She paused. "That is the kind of mother I am." He heard the thing underneath that last sentence. "What is her name?" he asked. "Lily." Something moved through his face. She watched it. Something that came from deep and had nowhere to go. "Lily," he said quietly. "Yes. Does she—" He stopped. Tried again. "Does she look like you?" "She looks like both of us," Claire said. "You will see that yourself, if we get that far." He looked at the table, then back up. "I want to explain," he said. "What happened? I want you to understand." "I understand what happened," Claire said. "I was there. My mother came to my dorm room with a check and told me my daughter's existence was a problem to be managed." Claire kept her voice even, completely even. "I know what your mother did. She sat in my desk chair and told me your obligations predated any feelings you might have had for me. Those were her exact words. I have never forgotten them." He went very still. "You knew about that?" he said. "I was the person she did it to." He closed his eyes briefly. "I did not know she went to see you," he said. "I found out later. After." He opened his eyes. "That is not an excuse. It does not change what I did. I know that, but I need you to know I did not send her. I did not ask her to do that." "What did you do, Preston?" she asked. Quietly, not with anger, just the actual question. "While she was doing that, what exactly did you do?" Silence. A long, honest silence. "I let it happen," he said. "I was 22 and terrified, and I let my mother manage it, because I did not know how to be what you needed me to be, and I was wrong. I have known I was wrong for 10 years. I am not asking you to forgive me for it. I am asking—" He stopped, steadied himself. "I am asking if there is any version of a path forward where I can know my daughter." Claire looked at him. She had prepared for many versions of this conversation, defensive, entitled, carefully legal, She had not fully prepared for him to look this tired and this specific in his shame. She needed to ask one more thing. "Are you doing this because you want to be a father?" she said. "Or because your father just died and you are looking for something to hold on to?" He was quiet for a long moment. "Both," he said. "Honestly, maybe both. But mostly," he paused. "My father died without knowing about Lily. He never knew he had a granddaughter. I sat in that funeral home and thought about what I had chosen, what I had walked away from, what I had let happen." He looked at his hands. "I do not want to get to the end of my life and have missed the whole thing. She is 10. I have already missed 10 years. I cannot get those back. But I could be there for the next 10, if she would want that, if you would allow it." The espresso machine hissed again. Claire thought about Lily that morning, not looking at her, zipping her jacket. "I just thought that was nice. That's all. I am not deciding anything today," Claire said. "This is an information meeting. I am going to take what you have said and think carefully about it. Then I am going to think about what is best for my daughter." "That is all I'm asking," he said. "No," she said. "You're asking for quite a lot more than that. But that is where we start." She picked up her bag. "I will be in touch." She stood. He stood too. An instinct. Old manners. "Claire?" She turned. "She is lucky to have you." She looked at him. "I know that," she said. She walked out of the coffee shop into the October afternoon. She sat in her car, both hands on the wheel. The stone at the bottom of the lake was moving now. Just slightly, but moving. She was 12 minutes late to work that day. Her supervisor raised an eyebrow. "Traffic," Claire said. 4 years. Never once late for traffic. Her supervisor looked at her for a moment. "Let it go." Claire went to work. She put her whole self into it. She held Mr. Garvey's shoulder steady through his exercises. She worked with a new patient, a 43-year-old woman named Helen, who had survived a stroke in August and was relearning to use her right hand. Claire held the woman's hand and guided it around the pen. "Good," she said. "That is good. Keep going. You are stronger than you think." She always meant it when she said that. "He said both," Dana said. She was sitting across from Claire at the kitchen table. Friday evening. Lily was at a sleepover at her friend Avery's house. The table had a bottle of wine on it and a bowl of chips neither of them had actually eaten. The chips were there for comfort purposes, emotional support chips. "He said he is doing it because he wants to be a father and because his father died," Claire said. "At least he was honest about both things at once." "That is actually a green flag," Dana said. "It is a yellow flag, at best. A yellow flag is better than a red one. Donna, I am just saying." Dana refilled her glass. She was wearing her Friday clothes. Teacher cardigan, hair down. Her real laugh had been out since about 7 minutes into the wine. You went in there expecting a man who was going to blame everyone else and make it all very smooth and legal. And he did not do that. He mentioned his mother. He took responsibility and mentioned his mother as a contributing factor. Those are different things, and you know it. Claire looked at her. Dana pointed her wine glass. "I am a science teacher. Precision matters in my classroom and also in this kitchen." Claire laughed against her will. She got up, went to the window. The yellow flowers were getting dry now. She would replace them Tuesday. Always Tuesday. Lily asked about him, she said, not looking at Dana. Not directly. She talked about her friend Avery's dad coming to a soccer game. She said she thought it was nice. She was not looking at me when she said it. She paused. She was circling it. "She is at the age," Dana said. "Around 10, 11, kids start really building the story of themselves. Who am I? Where did I come from? Why does my family look the way it does? She is going to need more of the story soon. She has the story. She needs more of it. Dana set down her glass. She leaned forward. Claire, I have been on your side for 10 years. You know that. I sat in that dorm bathroom with you. I drove you to the hospital. I ate terrible vending machine sandwiches for 31 hours, and I only complained twice. You complained 3 times. The second time you got very detailed about it. Fine. 3 times. The point is, I am always on your side, and being on your side right now means saying this. She paused. Lily gets to know her father. If he is willing to do the work, if he shows up consistently, that is not for you or for him to decide between yourselves. That is her right, and the most generous thing you can do for her is make space for it before she has to fight for it. Claire stared out the window. The street was quiet outside. Friday evening, quiet. Yellow light in other people's windows, other people's ordinary Fridays. What if he disappears again? She said. Her voice was smaller for a moment, just for a moment. What if he comes in and she opens up to him and then something changes? His fiancé, his schedule, his priorities, and he is gone again? She turned from the window. What does that do to her? That is the real question, Dana said. It is the only question. Yeah, Dana was quiet. But you cannot protect her from the possibility of being hurt by him without also protecting her from the possibility of knowing him, and knowing him might be the thing she needs. Claire came back to the table. She sat down. I need conditions, she said. This goes at my pace, on my terms. She is my daughter. I am her parent. He earns access slowly, with accountability, everything documented. That is exactly right, Dana said. I am going to talk to a family law attorney. Good. And I am going to talk to Lily. Dana went still. Yeah, she said softly. You are. I do not know how to start that conversation. With the truth, Dana said. The way you always have with her. Just bigger truth now. Claire reached for the chips she had not been eating. I was so angry, she said quietly, for so long. I did not let myself feel it because I was too busy surviving. Too busy being pregnant, and then too busy having a newborn, and then working and studying and childcare and just moving so I would not have to feel how angry I was. I know, Dana said, and now I feel it. Now he is back, and I feel it, and I do not know what to do with it. Because the anger is real. What he did was real. 10 years were real. She looked at her hands. But Lily is also real, and what she needs is also real. Both things are real at the same time. Both things can be true, Dana said. You can be angry and still do the right thing. I know, Claire said. I know that. She ate a chip. He has a fiancée, she said. Her name is Vivian. Of course it is, Dana said. She posts on Instagram. They look very... Claire searched. Curated. Curated is not the same as happy. I know. A pause. He built a whole life. He was just living, dating. Meanwhile, I was raising his daughter, and he was just out there, living. Yeah, Dana said. That is real and also not the point. I know it is not the point. But it still stings. A little, yes, a little bit still. Donna reached across the table and put her hand over Claire's. They sat like that for a minute. You are going to handle this, Dana said. You have handled everything. This is just the next thing. Claire turned her hand over and held Dana's back. The turtle in the frog song wants waffles, Claire said. Dana laughed. Her full room-filling laugh. Of course it does, she said. 4 days later, Lily came to her. Sunday afternoon, the quiet part of a Sunday. Lily had been unusually thoughtful all weekend. Claire had given her space. She knew her daughter's processing rhythms by now. Lily sat down across from her at the kitchen table. She folded her hands on the table, very deliberate. I want to tell you something, Lily said. Okay, Claire said. I already know something is happening, Lily said. You have been different this week. Not bad different, just thinking different. And the drawer in the kitchen has something in it you keep almost looking at. Claire blinked. 10 years old. Those eyes that missed nothing. You're right, Claire said. There is something. I was waiting until I was ready to talk to you about it. I am ready whenever you are, Lily said. Claire took a breath. She told her. She told her carefully, in the honest language she had always used with her daughter. Your father reached out. He wants to meet you. I met with him first. I am not making any decisions without talking to you. Lily listened without interrupting. She looked at the table, then at Claire. Why now? She asked. His own father died, Claire said. I think it made him think about things he had been avoiding. Lily considered this. Are you going to let him? She asked. That depends on what you want, Claire said, and on whether I believe he will be consistent. If I let someone into your life, he has to stay. I am not letting you get hurt. You cannot always prevent that, Lily said. 19, again, in that dorm room. Claire pushed the thought away. You are right, she said. I cannot always prevent it. Lily looked at her hands. Why did he not want me before? She asked. Quiet? Just the actual question. I was so stupid. The signs were all there, but this is not about me. He was scared, Claire said. And he came from a family that made it easy to walk away. And he chose to walk away. She kept her voice steady. That was his failure, not yours. You have never been anything less than the most wonderful thing. The failure was entirely his. Lily nodded slowly. Does he know about the frog song? She asked. Claire stopped. She understood the question. Does he know anything real about me? Not just that I exist. Does he know who I am? Not yet, Claire said. Lily nodded again. She stood up. I want to think about it, she said. Of course you do. Can I finish my chapter? Yes. Go finish your chapter. 3 weeks after the park. That was when the first complication arrived. Claire was at the kitchen table on a Thursday evening. Lily was upstairs. Homework, or horse book, or the frog song's newest verses. Claire had a cup of tea going cold in front of her. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost did not answer. She answered, Ms. Whitmore. A woman's voice. Smooth, controlled. The specific kind of composure that has never had to earn itself. Claire knew it immediately. She sat up straighter without meaning to. Yes, she said. This is Eleanor Caldwell. Claire set down her tea. The kitchen. Again. This room that kept receiving things. Mrs. Caldwell, she said, completely level. Made it level on purpose. I understand you have been meeting with my son, Eleanor said. That is correct. And that you have introduced the child to him. Not the child. Her name is Lily. That is correct, Claire said. I want to be candid with you. Please do. What you are doing, Eleanor said, introducing this child into Preston's life at this particular moment, when he is preparing to be married, is deeply disruptive. Whatever feelings you may have about the past, whatever you are hoping to accomplish, Mrs. Caldwell, Claire's voice was clean and precise. Not cold, not raised, precise. I am going to stop you there. Silence on the line. I have no agenda, Claire said. I have a 10-year-old daughter who has a right to know her father. I have a child who asked, entirely on her own, whether she could meet him. I am acting on what my daughter needs. Not on feelings about you, not on an agenda. She paused. Something had been sitting inside her for 11 years. Something she had been 19 and too stunned to say. She was 29 now. I want you to understand something, she said. Something I should have said in that dorm room. Eleanor was very still on the line. Claire could feel it. You came to me with a check, Claire said. You treated my daughter's existence, before she was even born, as a problem to be solved with money. You treated me as an inconvenience." Her voice did not shake. She was proud of that. "I was 19 years old, sitting on the edge of my bed, and you sat in my desk chair and told me I was not appropriate for your family. And I refused then, and I am refusing now to be managed or intimidated." She paused. "My daughter is not a complication. She is a person. She will be treated as one, by everyone." A long pause. "I see," Eleanor said, quietly. "I hope so, because Preston is an adult making his own choices. Whatever issues you have with those choices, please bring them to him, not to me." She ended the call. She sat very still. Then she looked at the window. The yellow flowers caught the kitchen light. She had said all of that clearly, steadily, without her voice shaking once. I deserved better than this. I always did. She was not 19 anymore. The second complication came from Preston himself. He called a few days after Eleanor's call. He had been calling every few days since the first park meeting. Brief check-ins, respectful. He never pushed for information Claire had not offered first. This call was different. "I need to tell you something," he said. "Vivian is struggling with this." Claire waited. "She said she supported it," he said. "When I told her, she seemed to. But I think the reality of it is harder than she expected." "That is between you and her," Claire said. "I know. I just want to be transparent with you." "What I need from you," Claire said, "is transparency about whether her feelings will affect your consistency with Lily. That is the only part relevant to me." "They will not," he said. "I have made that clear to her." "Good." She paused. "Preston, I need you to understand something. Lily is not a secret. She is not a scheduling issue or a past complication. She is your daughter. If the person you are marrying cannot accept that with full generosity and clarity, that is a problem you need to solve before going any further. Because Lily cannot be the one who gets hurt when the adults around her cannot manage their feelings." "I hear that," he said. "She mentioned you to Dana's husband," Claire said. Casually. Just as a fact, she said she met her dad last month. She does not say things like that lightly. Silence. "She called me her dad?" he asked. "In passing, yes." She heard something in his silence. Something that was not managed or careful. Something that was just a person being hit by the weight of something real. "I am not going to disappear again," he said. "People say that," she said. "I am going to show it." "Yes," she said, "you are." The third complication came from inside herself. She had not expected that one. A Thursday evening, driving home from work. The radio on low, a song she did not recognize at first. Then she did. And then she was 19 again, in a coffee shop, and a tall man was asking her about the difference between an espresso and an Americano. Not because he did not know, because he wanted a reason to keep talking. She had to pull over. She sat on the side of the road. She felt something she had not allowed herself to feel in a very long time. Not grief for Preston. She was not in love with Preston Caldwell. She was entirely clear on who he was and what he had done, but grief for herself, for 19-year-old Claire, for the version of the future she had believed in so completely, for the girl who had not known yet how much she would have to carry, for the loss of that particular kind of hope that you only have when you are young enough to not know yet that hope can break. She had carried the weight well. She was genuinely proud of that. But she had never fully grieved what she did not get to have, the story she thought she was in, the ending she thought was coming. She sat on the side of the road. She let herself feel it. Not for him, for herself. She cried the way she had cried the night the letter came, slow, silent, the long exhale of something held too long. She cried for maybe 5 minutes. Then she stopped. She took a breath. She drove home. She made dinner. The good chicken, the specific chicken Lily called the good kind. Lily came down and set the table without being asked. This was new. Claire filed it. Lily sang 3 new verses of the frog song. The frog had developed a whole social circle now. There was a beaver who had opinions about crepes. Claire laughed through all of the dinner. The grief had been real. The laughter was also real. Both things were true at the same time. I am not crazy. I know exactly what is happening inside me. December arrived, cold and specific, the kind of cold that reminded you the year was finishing something. The meetings with Preston continued, carefully, on Lily's timeline. A second meeting at the pond. Then a lunch, the 3 of them. Donna, visible but at a distance. Then a lunch at a restaurant where Dana was 2 doors down at a coffee shop and Lily could text her if needed. Lily texted her once. Not in distress, just to say, he knows the exact coordinates of a famous penalty kick from the 1986 World Cup. Thought you should know. Dana had texted back, respect. Lily had shown Claire both messages. He was showing up. Every time. On time. No cancellations. No rescheduling. He sent things when something reminded him of her. A book about a girl marine biologist because Lily had mentioned sea turtles once. A postcard from Seattle with a seahorse on it. Not performing. That was what Claire watched for. The difference between a man performing effort and a man actually making it. He was making it. He also made mistakes. In early December, he suggested, in an unguarded moment, that Lily might want to see his apartment in New York before Christmas. Just one day, just to see where he lived. Lily told Claire that evening. Claire called him. Too fast, she said. Way too fast. We have not gotten there. I know, I got ahead of myself. She is not ready for your world without me present. She needs more time in neutral spaces first. You are right. I will apologize to her directly. Please do. He had. The next time he saw Lily, he said, I moved too fast. I was excited, and I did not think about what was fair to you. I am sorry. Lily told Claire about the apology that evening. She was neutral when she told it. The way she was neutral when processing things she had not yet decided how to feel about. He said he was excited, Lily said. I know. Is it weird that that part is actually nice to hear? No, Claire said. That part makes complete sense. Lily nodded slowly. She turned the information over. He is trying, she said. Not a question, an observation. Yes, Claire said. He is. Eleanor called one more time. Different from the first call. Shorter. She said, I want to meet her. Claire said, that is not something I can decide for you and Preston. Talk to your son. Eleanor said, he said it is your decision. Claire said, then the answer is not yet. When Lily is ready. On her terms, Eleanor said, she is my granddaughter. Yes, Claire said. She is. A pause, a long one. Eleanor said, I was not kind to you. Claire had not expected that. She waited. Eleanor said, I came into your room and treated you as a problem. You were 19 years old. You were, she stopped. You don't have to finish right now, Claire said. No, Eleanor said. I do. You were brave. You kept her. You raised her. Everything she is. Everything is because of you. And I sat in that room and treated you like an obstacle. A long silence. You can make a different choice now, Claire said. I intend to, Eleanor said. They hung up. Claire stood in her kitchen for a long time. Not forgiving. Not yet. That was a longer road, but something had released. The dorm room, the beige coat, the check on the bed, the cold efficiency of it. She had carried that specific humiliation for 11 years. And now Eleanor, in her 70s, having buried her husband, having lost control of the outcome, was saying, I was not kind to you, not enough. But something, a start of something. Lily made a Christmas card for Preston. She drew it herself. A duck at a pond on the front. The duck was wearing a small scarf. On the inside, she wrote in her careful 10-year-old handwriting, For my dad. I am glad we met. I hope we keep doing this. Lily. She showed Claire before she sent it. Claire read it. She had to look away for a moment and blink. Is it weird to call him my dad on the card? Lily asked. He is not my dad. Not yet. Maybe not ever exactly. But he is. He is your father, Claire said. What you call him is your choice. Whatever feels right. Lily looked at the card. I think Dad is okay for the card, she said. It can mean different things at different levels. That is very mature thinking, Claire said. I know, Lily said. Claire laughed. She could not help it. You are exactly your own person, she said. Lily grinned, the wide, crooked, gap-toothed grin. I know that too, she said. Christmas Eve. Lily was asleep. The house was quiet in the specific way that Christmas Eve houses are quiet. That held breath quality, all the anticipation contained in the stillness. Claire was in the kitchen. She had cleaned up the dinner things. She had set out the one present Lily always opened Christmas morning, the small wrapped box that had been their tradition since Lily was 4. She had done all the ordinary tasks of a good evening. Now she sat at the kitchen table. She sat with the full weight of the year. The letter in October, the meetings, the careful progress, the complications, Eleanor's second phone call, Lily's Christmas card, the Christmas card that said Dad, and underneath all of it, in the layer she had been managing around, the thing she had not fully faced. She was afraid. Not of Preston, not of Eleanor, not of the legal situation or the complications. She was afraid of hope. She had built this life very carefully. She had built it on the foundation of knowing she could count on herself absolutely. She had structured everything so that the only person she needed to trust completely was herself. And now there was this opening, this slow, careful, terrifying opening. What if he hurt Lily? Not today, not this week, but 6 months from now, or a year from now. When Lily had let him in further, when she had started to need him in the specific way children need fathers, when the attachment had grown, and then something changed in his life. Vivian, business, distance. And he made the same choice again that he had made 11 years ago. What if Claire had built this opening and it became the thing that broke her daughter? She sat at the table. She pressed her hands flat against the wood. The refrigerator hummed. The kitchen clock ticked. The yellow flowers on the windowsill were dark. God, what if I am doing this wrong? What if the right thing and the thing I am doing are not the same thing? What if I am trusting the wrong read on who he is now? She had been wrong before. She had been 19 and so sure. She had read him as someone who would stay. She had been completely, thoroughly, entirely wrong. What if she was wrong again? She sat in the dark kitchen for a long time. She did not cry this time. This was a different kind of hard, not the grief of the November drive. This was the kind of fear that does not weep. This was the kind that just sits with you, quiet and very heavy, and asks its questions in the dark. The clock ticked. She thought about Lily upstairs, asleep in that room, the horse book on the nightstand, the sea turtle map on the wall. One arm thrown off the side of the bed, the way she had slept since she was a baby. She thought about what Lily needed, not what was safe, what was needed. She thought about the Christmas card. I am glad we met. I hope we keep doing this. Her daughter had written that. Her 10-year-old daughter had made a choice and put it in a card and mailed it, without being pushed, without being guided toward it. Lily had arrived at that choice entirely on her own. Children always know what they need. Sometimes they know it better than we do. Claire sat in the dark kitchen. She thought, I cannot protect her from every possible hurt. She thought, I have never been able to do that. I just thought I could. She thought, what I can do is stay present, stay her parent, stay the person she comes to when things go wrong. That is the only real protection anyone can offer anyone. She took a long, slow breath. She got up. She went to Lily's doorway. She stood there in the dark. Lily slept. The thin line of moonlight through the window, the steady breathing, the arm off the side of the bed, the extraordinary, ordinary fact of her. Claire had been terrified at 19. She had stayed terrified for a while, and then the terror had slowly, gradually transformed into something else, into competence, into love that was not afraid of itself, into a life. The fear would not run this show. It had not run it then. It would not run it now. She went to bed. She slept. In the morning, Lily came into her room at 6:52 and announced that it was Christmas. It is indeed Christmas, Claire said. Get up, Lily said. I have been awake since 5. Why didn't you come in at 5? Because that is not respectful of your sleep schedule, Lily said. I have been waiting for almost 2 hours. You are welcome. Claire laughed. She got up. They went downstairs together. The small house, the green shutters, the garden outside where the bulbs were sleeping under the mulch, waiting for March, the blue vase on the windowsill, catching the early light, the one wrapped present under the small tree. Lily sat on the floor next to it, both hands on her knees, waiting. Claire sat in the armchair. Go ahead, she said. Lily opened it carefully. She always opened things carefully, even presents, even at Christmas. A small compass, silver, etched on the back. You always know which way is forward. Lily held it. She looked at it for a long time. Mom, she said, yeah, this is the best present. I know, Claire said. Lily looked up. Because I do, she said. I always know which way is forward. Yes, Claire said. You do. Starting over feels impossible sometimes, but staying still feels worse. That has always been the truth. January. The new year arrived quietly. They spent New Year's Eve at Dana's house. Greg made chili. Lily stayed up until midnight and fell asleep on the couch at 12:03. Claire carried her to the guest room. Dana and Greg and Claire sat by the fireplace with small glasses of something warm. How are you? Dana asked. Not about Lily, about Claire. The specific about Claire question. Good, Claire said. And this time she meant the full version of it. Not the managing it version, not the surviving it version, the actual version. Yeah, Dana said. I think I did the right thing, Claire said. I think I am still doing it. And I think, she looked at the fire. I think I put something down that I was carrying. The anger? Some of it, she paused. The kind that was eating at me underneath everything. Still living in me like something unfinished. I put it down on the side of a road in November, and I did not pick it back up. Dana smiled. I will drink to that, she said. They did. In January, Claire had coffee with Preston alone, without Lily. She had requested this specifically. He was at the table when she arrived. He put his phone away when she sat down. She noticed that. He always put his phone away. I want to tell you some things, she said, about the 10 years. Not so you feel guilty. I am past needing that, but because you should know what your daughter went through so you understand what she has built and why I need you to be so careful with it. Okay, he said. He was still, listening. She talked. She talked about the day Lily was born, 31 hours of labor and Dana's terrible vending machine sandwiches. She talked about the first year, the sleeplessness, the fear that was always present, just in the background, the low frequency of being solely responsible for a human life. She talked about daycare and the specific anguish of dropping off a 6-month-old and walking away from her crying. She talked about Lily's first illness, the fever of 103 at 2 in the morning in the emergency room and sitting alone in the plastic chair, holding Lily's small hand and singing a made-up song about a duck to keep her calm. Singing it louder when Lily's eyes started to close, just to keep her present, just to keep her here. She talked about Lily's first day of school, the backpack that had always been slightly too big, the way Lily had not looked back at the door. She talked about soccer, the frog song, the horse book, the sea turtle map, the way Lily processed the world, slowly and carefully and then with a sudden depth that stopped you cold, the way she knew exactly what she needed and was not afraid to say it. She talked about the Christmas card. Preston sat across from her and listened. He did not interrupt. He did not explain himself. He did not insert his not explain himself. He did not insert his feelings into any of it. He just listened. When she stopped, he was quiet for a while. Then he said, "Thank you." "I am not done," she said. "Okay." "I need you to understand what I'm offering," she said. "Not a relationship with me. Not forgiveness on a timeline that works for your conscience. Not an easy return to something you walked away from." She looked at him directly. "I am offering you the chance to build something real and slow and honest with your daughter, on her terms, with my oversight until she does not need it. And that means every time, not most times, every single time." "I understand," he said. "And the Vivian situation," she said. "Whatever is happening there must never affect Lily. I do not care how you handle it, but it gets handled. Because if your relationship creates instability in what Lily is building with you, I will protect her from it, without hesitation and without apology." He met her eyes. "Understood," he said. She picked up her tea. "She wrote Dad in that Christmas card," she said. "You should know she does not give that word easily. She thought carefully about it. She chose it on purpose." His jaw tightened, holding something in. "I know," he said quietly. "Do not make her regret it." "I will not." She believed him, not blindly, with open eyes and conditions and the understanding that people could still fail. But she believed him the way you believe someone who has been showing up consistently and who now has something real to lose. She stood. "I will see you Saturday," she said. "Lily wants to show you her practice." "I will be there," he said. "I know," she said, "because you always are, now." She walked out into a January afternoon, cold and bright, the winter sky that particular shade of deep blue, her breath making small clouds. She stood on the sidewalk for a moment. She thought, "This is not the ending I imagined at 19. She thought, "But it is a real one." At 19, she had thought the story was a love story, the kind that ends with two people together. She had thought the arc was girl meets boy, falls in love, they build something together. The arc had been different. The arc had been girl meets boy. Boy leaves. Girl builds everything herself. Boy returns. Girl decides on her own terms what to do with that. And the thing she had built, the small green shuttered house, the tuo-bob house, the Tuesday flowers, the steady work with her steady hands, the daughter with the soccer jersey and the horse book and the frog song and the compass, was not the consolation prize. It was the whole thing. It was the life, not plan B, the life. She put her hands in her pockets. She walked to her car. She drove home. March arrived slowly, the way March arrives in North Carolina, hesitating, stepping forward, and pulling back. A cold morning, then a warm afternoon, then cold again, the year making up its mind. The garden was starting. Claire had put in new bulbs in late fall, covered them with mulch, and hoped. She had killed this garden twice before. Third time it had taken. She had learned to trust it. Now there were small green shoots pushing through. The first brave edges of something, thin and very green, insistent. She was kneeling in the dirt on a Saturday morning when Lily came out onto the porch. Lily sat on the top step, the horse book in her lap. She had read it twice now. She was reading it a third time. "I have a question," Lily said. Claire sat back on her heels, pulled off her garden glove. "Okay." "Do you think he will stay?" Lily asked. "Really stay? Long term?" The direct questions, always when you were not quite expecting them. Claire thought about how to answer. She thought about the honest version, the cautious version, the hopeful version. "I think he is trying very hard to be a person who stays," she said. "I think he means it. I also think the only way to know for sure is time, and I think you already know that." Lily turned the cover of her book. "I am not waiting for him to be my full-time dad," she said. "I know that is not what this is. My family is already my family. It does not need to be fixed." "What is it then?" Claire asked. "What is he?" Lily thought. "He is like finding out where part of you came from," she said. "Like a source. Part of me has a source now, and I get to decide how important that is." She paused. "It does not have to be everything or nothing." Claire looked at her daughter, 10 years old, sitting on the porch step with her horse book. "That is exactly right," Claire said. "That is precisely what it is." "I figured," Lily said. She opened her book. "I am going to be a marine biologist." He says, "I ask good scientific questions." He is right. "I know," Lily said. Preston arrived at 1 o'clock. He had been coming to the house for 2 months now. The first time, Lily had opened the door herself and looked at him. "You can come in," she had said, "but shoes off. It is a rule." He had taken his shoes off. Today Lily let him in and took him to the kitchen. She wanted to show him the sea turtle map. She had added 3 new migration routes since he last saw it. She explained them with the precision and enthusiasm of someone who has thought about this considerably. He looked at the map. He looked at the whole refrigerator, the drawings, the photographs, the periodic table, the map of the Pacific. "You made all of these?" he asked. "Most of them," she said. "Mom made the one with the rosemary plant, but she labeled it wrong, so I corrected it." Claire from the counter, "I labeled it correctly." Lily to Preston, "She labeled it incorrectly." Preston kept his expression very careful and neutral. "I see," he said. Claire handed him a cup of coffee. They stood in her kitchen. Their hands did not touch. The refrigerator hummed. The green shoots were visible through the kitchen window, the garden coming back. At the soccer practice, Preston stood beside Claire on the sideline. He was not performing presence. He was just present, watching with the focus of someone who understood they were seeing something that mattered. Lily was on the field, fast, precise. She knew where to be before the ball got there. She talked to her teammates in that wordless way that comes from 100 hours of practice together. She scored, not a historic one, clean and efficient. She pointed immediately at the girl who had passed to her. Credit to the assist. That was Lily. Preston exhaled beside Claire. She glanced at him. His jaw was set, holding something. "She is good," he said. His voice had something rough in it. "She has worked very hard," Claire said. "For years." "Yeah." He did not look away from the field. "Is she happy?" Claire looked at her daughter, running back to position. The easy movement, the comfort in her body, in this field, in this specific afternoon. "She is very happy," Claire said. "She has always been very happy." He nodded. They stood together and watched her. After the practice, Lily sat in the back seat of the car. She was quiet on the way home. Not unhappy quiet, processing quiet. Claire knew the difference. She let her process. At home, Lily came into the kitchen while Claire started dinner. She leaned against the counter. "He cried," she said. "At the game, he tried to hide it, but I saw." Claire kept her hands on the cutting board. "Did that bother you?" she asked. Lily thought about it. "No," she said. "He looked glad, not sad. He looked like someone who was very glad and did not know where to put it." "I think that is exactly right," Claire said. Lily was quiet for a moment. She looked at the refrigerator, the sea turtle map, the periodic table, all her work. "Mom," she said. "Yeah." "Thank you for making this happen." She paused. "I know it cost you something. I can figure things out. I am not little anymore." Another pause. "You did something hard because it was right for me. That is what moms do, I guess. But you did it really well." Claire set down the knife. She crossed the kitchen and pulled her daughter into a hug. Both arms. Tight. They stood in the kitchen. Strawberry shampoo. Always the same. "I love you," Claire said. "I know," Lily said, muffled against her shoulder. "I love you too." A moment passed. "The beaver in the frog song," Lily said. "He has a sister now. The sister wants crepes, but specifically the thin kind." Claire laughed. All the way through it. Starting over had felt impossible once. Staying still had felt worse. She had chosen to keep moving. She had been right to. May arrived. The garden was fully awake. The rosemary Claire had planted 3 summers ago had come back dense and fragrant. The bulb she had put in last fall had opened. The lavender along the left side was pushing upward. The whole front of the small, green-shuttered house smelled like something growing. She stood in the garden on a Saturday morning, coffee in her hand, both feet in the dirt. 10 years ago, she had stood in a cold dorm room bathroom and looked at 2 lines on a test and thought, everything changes now. She had been right. Everything had changed. Not the way she thought it would. Not the story she had believed she was in. Not the ending she had imagined. Something better than that imagined ending. Something real. The letter had arrived in October, 7 months ago. In 7 months, Lily had met her father 6 times. 7 times, counting soccer. She had had her rules from the beginning, and she had held them with the calm authority of a person who knows exactly what she needs. He had not canceled once. He had made one mistake, the New York suggestion, and he had apologized for it directly and not made the same mistake again. He had sent things, small things, a book, a postcard, a photograph of the town where his grandmother grew up, because he was learning that Lily liked knowing where things came from. He was learning her. Slowly, on her terms, the way it should have started 10 years ago and did not. But this was what it was, not what it should have been, what it was. That was its own kind of peace. Claire had a conversation with her mother in April, on the phone, an hour long. Her mother listened to everything. Then she said what mothers say. She said, "Your grandmother used to say that the measure of a person is not who they were at their worst. It is who they become after." Claire had thought about that for days. It applied to Preston. Maybe. It also applied to Eleanor, who had asked 3 times now about meeting Lily and been told not yet and accepted not yet with more grace than Claire had expected. It applied to Claire herself, who had been 19 and terrified and had chosen anyway, who had been wrong about someone she loved and had carried that quietly, who had built a life in the space where a different life should have been, and who had become, in that building, the person she had not known she was going to be. That person, not the one she had planned, the one she had earned. Lily came to her one morning in May, Saturday, the easy kind of Saturday, nowhere to be until noon. She sat across from Claire at the kitchen table, the same table where the letter had arrived, the same table where so much of this year had happened. She had something in her hand, the compass, the small silver one from Christmas. You always know which way is forward. She turned it over in her hands. I want to tell you something, she said. Okay, Claire said. I think I was scared, Lily said. Before we met him, I did not know I was scared, but I was. I was scared that meeting him would change something, like it would take something away. She looked at the compass. But it did not. My life is still my life. You are still you. Dana is still Dana. Everything is still everything. She paused. He is just also there, which is... She looked up. Good, I think. Which is a little strange because I thought it would be complicated, and it is, a little, but mostly it is just good. Claire looked at her daughter, 10 years and 7 months old. Yeah, Claire said. I think so too. Lily turned the compass over once more. He is going to come to my game next week, she said. The big one, against Northside. I know. Both of you will be there. Both of us will be there. Lily considered this. That is okay, she said. That is actually okay. She put the compass on the table between them, a small silver circle on the wood, the needle pointing. I am going to finish my chapter, she said. Go finish your chapter, Claire said. Lily left. Claire sat at the table. She looked at the compass. You always know which way is forward. She thought about 19, about standing in that cold dorm bathroom with everything in her life about to change, about the choice she had made, about the $50,000 check she had held in her hand and given back, about moving to North Carolina 6 months pregnant, about finishing her degree, about the specific night she had held a feverish baby in a hospital waiting room and sung a made-up song about a duck until 3 in the morning, about 4 years at Briar Creek, about Mr. Garvey and his jokes about her cheerfulness, about Helen relearning to hold a pen, about all of it. Every incremental patient inch, about Dana, about the vending machine sandwiches, about 10 years of that table, and that laugh and that particular voice that told the truth when it mattered. About the Tuesday flowers, about Lily, who wanted to be a marine biologist and had already memorized the migration routes of 3 species of sea turtle, who sang a song about a frog who wanted pancakes, who had a friend group, a soccer team, a compass, a horse book, a beaver character in an ongoing saga, and a sense of herself so complete and particular and whole that it stopped Claire in her tracks at least once a week. Lily, who had not been a complication, who had never been anything less than a gift, who had arrived in the worst moment and become the entire meaning of everything after. The game was on a Wednesday, the big one, as Lily had said, against Northside, who had beaten them in October. The whole team had been talking about this game for 2 weeks. Claire got there at 3:45. The field was still filling up. She found a spot on the sideline. Preston arrived at 3:50. He came to stand beside her. He had a travel coffee cup. They stood side by side on the sideline. They did not make much conversation. They did not need to. They were there for the same reason. That was enough. Lily was warming up on the field. She saw them both. She raised one hand, briefly, not waving, just acknowledging. I see you. I am glad you are both here. Then she went back to warming up. The game started. Lily played with everything she had. She was quick and precise and communicative. She called out to her teammates. She adjusted. She made a mistake in the 23rd minute and recovered from it without visible distress. She made another run in the 31st minute that resulted in an assist. And in the 44th minute of a tight, difficult, entirely gripping game against Northside, Lily Whitmore received a pass near the left side of the penalty area, took one touch to control it, and drove it low and hard into the bottom right corner of the net. The sideline erupted. Claire's hands went up. Beside her, Preston exhaled something that sounded like it had been held in for a very long time. Lily did not run to the corner flag. She did not do an elaborate celebration. She pointed at the girl who had passed to her. Then she looked at the sideline. She looked at Claire first, then at Preston. She nodded at both of them. The same small, decisive nod. I see you. I am glad you are both here. Then she ran back to position. After the game, the teams celebrated on the field. Parents milled around. Claire stood with Dana and Greg. Preston stood a little apart, giving them space. Lily was with her team, laughing, jumping, in full possession of the moment. Then she peeled off from the group and came over to where Preston was standing. Claire watched from a distance. She could not hear what they were saying, but she could see it. Lily stood in front of him. She was still in full victory energy, her jersey sweaty, her hair escaping its ponytail. She looked up at him and said something. He listened. He said something back. And then Lily, who had said, I am not looking for a dad, who had held her rules from the beginning, who had arrived at everything on her own terms and nobody else's, Lily reached up and hugged him. Briefly, one arm around his side, the way you hug someone when you are 10 and still deciding how much of yourself to offer. He hugged her back, carefully, like something fragile and infinitely valuable. Then Lily pulled back, said something else, and ran back to her teammates. Preston stood where he was for a moment. Claire watched his face. She thought, he finally understands what he almost did not have. She thought, I hope he never forgets what it cost to get here. She thought, she is going to be okay. She has always been going to be okay. She thought, so am I. That evening, after everyone had gone home and dinner was done and Lily was in bed and the house was quiet, Claire stood at the kitchen window. The blue vase on the sill. Yellow flowers in it. Tuesday had been 2 days ago. The street outside was dark and quiet. A May evening, warm for once. The garden out front, alive and fragrant through the window screen. She thought about the story she had believed she was in at 19. The love story. The two people together. The arc she had trusted. She had been wrong about the story. She had been wrong about who he was and who she was inside that particular story and what the ending was supposed to be. But she had not been wrong about this, about the capacity to love something completely, about what it means to choose every single day, to choose the life in front of you over the grief of the one behind you, about the small, daily, unspectacular, revolutionary act of staying present, staying in the work, staying in the garden even when you kill it twice, staying for the Tuesday flowers even when the week is hard, staying for the frog song even when you are exhausted, staying for all of it. Lily had written, I hope we keep doing this. That was it. That was the whole wisdom of it. Keep doing this, whatever this is, the small things, the consistent things, the flowers on Tuesday, the burnt toast in the morning, the songs you make up yourself because the songs, already written, are not specific enough for your situation. Keep doing this, and trust that the doing builds something, not the thing you planned, something you earn, something true. She went to Lily's doorway one more time, the way she always did, at the end of the day. Lily was asleep. The horsebook on the nightstand, the compass on the small shelf above it, one arm off the side of the bed, the window letting in a thin line of May moonlight, the sea turtle map on the wall, the migration routes and colored marker. The whole Pacific laid out there, and Lily's drawings of where things went and where they returned to. Sea turtles migrate thousands of miles. They navigate by the Earth's magnetic field. They always find their way back to the place they came from. Lily had drawn that map herself. She always knew which way was forward. Tomorrow would be Thursday. Mr. Garvey would make a joke about her cheerfulness. Claire would tell him it was part of the treatment. He would ask for a refund. Helen would grip the pen a little tighter than last week, a little more sure. Claire would say, "Good. That is good. Keep going. You are stronger than you think." She would mean it. She always meant it. He always meant it. And on Tuesday, she would stop at the flower shop on her lunch break. The woman at the counter would say, "Yellow again?" And Claire would say, "Always yellow." And she would bring them home and put them in the blue vase on the windowsill. And the house would smell like flowers on a Tuesday, the way it always had, the way it always would. She stood in Lily's doorway a moment longer. Then she whispered what she always whispered, not out loud, just in that inner register that is not quite thought and not quite speech. "I chose you. Every single day. I chose you. And the choosing was never hard. It was the easiest thing I ever did." She went to bed. The May moonlight was on the garden, on the rosemary, on the green shuttered house, on the small compass on the shelf, in a sleeping girl's room. All needles pointing, all of it pointing forward. The frog got his pancakes. The turtle got his waffles. The beaver's sister got her thin crepes. And Lily sang all of it at the breakfast table on Sunday morning, performing for the dishes and the window and the yellow flowers on the sill. And Claire laughed, and the coffee was hot. And outside, the garden was growing. And that was everything. That was the whole thing. That was enough.
So that is the story of Claire, a woman who was 19 and terrified, who was handed the check and said no, who moved to a new city 6 months pregnant, who raised her daughter alone and well and completely, who built a garden and killed it twice before it finally took, and who, on a Tuesday with yellow flowers on the windowsill, made one of the hardest decisions a mother can make, not to forgive and forget, not to let the past go like it never happened, but to make space, carefully, on her own terms, for the sake of a child who deserved to know where she came from. Here is what this story is really teaching us. The first lesson is this: being abandoned does not define you. What defines you is what you build in the time you are given after that. Claire did not spend 10 years waiting to be rescued. She did not spend 10 years consumed by bitterness. She moved. She built. She created a life so specific and so full that by the time Preston Caldwell reappeared, he was not walking back into a void he had left. He was knocking on the door of something entirely complete. You are not the gap that someone left in your life. You are what you built in that gap. The second lesson: our children have rights that are separate from our pain. This is one of the hardest things for a hurt parent to hold. Claire had every reason to keep Preston out. Every reason. What he did was real. The 10 years were real. Her anger was real, and it was justified. And still, Lily needed to know where she came from. Not for his sake, for hers. There is a difference between protecting your child and protecting yourself through your child. Claire understood that difference. She acted on it even when it cost her something. That is one of the most selfless things a parent can do. If you are navigating something like this, Know this: your child's relationship with their other parent belongs to your child. You can set boundaries. You should. You can require consistency and accountability and all the things that protect your child's heart. But the relationship itself is not yours to withhold for reasons that belong to you alone. The third lesson: showing up is the whole thing. Preston had money, he had a family name, he had resources. None of that was what Lily needed from him. She needed him to come to the park, to take his shoes off at the door, to listen to the coordinates of a goal, to put his phone away, to apologize when he moved too fast, to show up every single time, on time, without canceling. That was it. That was the entire requirement. And this is true in every relationship. Not the grand gesture, not the expensive gift, not the perfect speech. The showing up, the consistent, ordinary, undramatic showing up. That is what builds trust. That is what builds love. That is the only currency that actually spends. The fourth lesson: you can hold someone accountable and still make room for them to grow. Claire did not forgive Preston and pretend nothing happened. She held the boundary. She named the conditions. She required accountability. She moved at Lily's pace, not his. And at the same time, she did not close the door permanently, because she understood something wise. People can change. Not always. Not automatically. But they can. And the way you find out is by watching what they do when they are given the chance to do differently. She watched him. She evaluated him with open eyes, and she made her decisions based on evidence, not on hope and not on fear. That is the most mature form of trust there is. Trust based on pattern, not on words. And the last lesson: the life you build from the ruins of the plan you had is not the backup plan. It is the real plan. It is the one that has your fingerprints on every wall. The one you earned by showing up on the hard days. The one built out of Tuesday flowers and 31-hour labors and burned toast and made up songs about frogs and gardens killed twice and planted again. That life is not less than what you imagined. In many ways, it is more. Because you chose it every single day. You chose it when you could have stopped. And everything built by daily choosing has a foundation that nothing built by accident can match. Claire stood in her garden in May, and she was not the same woman who had stood in that dorm bathroom 10 years before. She was someone her 19-year-old self could not have imagined. Someone steadier, kinder, more specific, more sure. Not because life had been easy, because it had not been. And she had kept going anyway. If you are in the middle of something hard right now, hear this. Keep going. Build the garden even if it dies the first time. Buy the Tuesday flowers even when the week is terrible. Sing the made-up song about the frog, and trust that the life you are building, day by day, choice by choice, is not a lesser version of the life you planned. It is the one that is actually yours, and that makes it the most valuable thing in the world. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for staying for the whole story. This content was manually researched, developed, and edited by our team with the intention of bringing meaning, healing, and real-life lessons to every person who listens. Every word in this story was chosen carefully. Every lesson was drawn from real human experience. We do not use shortcuts. We believe stories told with honesty and care have the power to help people feel less alone, more understood, and more capable of facing whatever they are carrying. That is why we do this work. And that is why your presence here, your time, and your attention means everything to us.